Hello, and welcome to the first ever episode of my still untitled gaming podcast. I'm your host, Areg, and I wasn't actually meant to start doing this podcast until my Patreon reached $5. But the PlayStation experience is a special occasion, so I wanted to do a special PSX preview episode. And, this podcast isn't very well planned out yet. Like, as you can see, there's no intro music and there won't be any outro music either. But anyway, in this episode, we'll discuss what Sony could possibly show at the event from the first-party studios, from the second-party studios, and the third-party studios and developers. So we'll start with the first-party studios. Sony owns 11 studios, which creates games exclusively for the PlayStation platforms, of course. So we'll go by region. So we'll start with Asia. So in Asia, we have two studios. Studio Japan is one of them. Studio Japan is a huge studio with several teams. So we have teams like Gen Design, previously known as Team Eco, who developed Eco, Shadow of the Colossus, and they're now working on The Last Guardian, of course. We have Project Siren, who developed Gravity Rush, or Gravity Days, as it's known as in Japan. And they're currently working on Gravity Rush 2, which was officially announced at the Paris Games Week less than 2 months ago. Other recent games that have come from the studio include Freedom Wars for the PlayStation Vita, Puppeteer, and Rain for the PS3, Knack, which was a PS4 launch game. Studio Japan also helps other studios with development or production. For example, they helped produce Bloodborne, and they're also helping with Q Games' The Tomorrow Children. Speaking of the Tomorrow Children, I think that's one game we will be seeing at this event, since the E3 trailer for this revealed an autumn 2015 release window, and we're now in December. So I wouldn't be surprised if this turns out to be one of those moments, one of those things where they show us a trailer or whatever on stage, and then afterwards the announcer or whatever goes, and it's available right now. Will we see The Last Guardian? I don't think so, but it will depend on when they're planning on releasing it. We know it's coming out in 2016, but we don't have any specific window in 2016 yet. And recently, Shuhei Yoshida, who is the president of the Sony Worldwide Studios, which is the first-party studios, said last month that they don't want to show too much of the game in order to preserve the story, because the game is very much about the story. So if they're planning on releasing the game in the final half of 2016, which to me seems like the most likely thing that's going to happen, it would make more sense for them to show The Last Guardian at E3, or maybe even Tokyo Game Show, depending on how late in the final half of 2016 this is going to be. What else could we see from Studio Japan? Who knows, really? Like, it's such a massive studio with so many teams that they could be working on anything. I think it might be too soon to see something from Gravity Rush 2 again, but you never know. Apart from that, apart from The Last Guardian and Gravity Rush 2, it could be anything, but if I was a betting man, I would bet on seeing something VR related from Studio Japan. PlayStation VR, of course, coming out in the first half of 2016, and you need to launch with software. And so far, we only have a handful of confirmed games for the PlayStation VR. And since Studio Japan is such a massive studio, I'm sure that somewhere within that building they have a team working on a VR game. So moving on to Sony's second Japanese studio, which is Polyphony Digital. Polyphony Digital is one of Sony's racing game studios. This is the studio responsible for the much-loved Gran Turismo series, the PlayStation's best-selling exclusive series, actually. So they're currently working on Gran Turismo Sport, which was officially announced at the Paris Games Week in October. I was surprised that they didn't call it Gran Turismo 7, but it is a trend these days for existing franchises to drop the number in their title, it seems. Either that or keep the number and add colon and then something, like Uncharted 4, A Thief's End, or Killzone Shadowfall, or the recent Assassin's Creed games, the ones after 4, Halo 5 Guardians. So yeah, it's a bit of a trend there. So the beta for Gran Turismo Sport is supposed to come in early 2016. So I wouldn't be surprised to see more of Gran Turismo at PSX. And we know there will be VR functionality in the game as well. So if it doesn't get stage time, it will probably be present on the show floor with a VR demo, most likely. And Polyphony Digital does nothing else than Gran Turismo. They haven't created something else than Gran Turismo since PS1, the PS1 era, so don't expect anything else other than Gran Turismo. And even though they only create Gran Turismo, it takes them forever to create a game, it seems. Like, I think Gran Turismo 5 took 6 years or something. But to be fair to them, Gran Turismo 6 did come out reasonably quick. Well, reasonably quick for Polyphony, because they're so attention focused. They just always want to perfect their games, it seems. So moving on to Europe, where we have quite a lot of studios. So we'll start with Evolution Studios. This studio is based in the UK and is responsible for MotorStorm and more recently Drive Club. Evolution is most likely still working on Drive Club, so the game has an interesting story. It was supposed to be a PS4 launch game, but it was delayed a whole year. And when it did eventually come out, the online servers were a complete mess, which may be fine if it was a mostly single-player game, but this was a game where the online functionality was really, really pushed. Like you were supposed to create clubs with your friends or whatever and drive against other clubs and stuff like that. And the servers just couldn't cope with the amount of people that tried to play the game. And the issues were eventually fixed, and the game is supposedly very, very good now. The game has an extremely dedicated and loyal fan base, and the game achieved great success despite the initial problems. The studio announced in July that they had sold 2 million copies of the game, and that was before the launch of the PlayStation Plus version that came out in June. So the studio is most likely working on more Drive Club DLC. We just saw Bikes DLC come out at the Paris Games Week. So they're probably still working on new DLC now, or maybe even a sequel. I doubt we will see them at PSX though, since they just announced and released the Bikes DLC, like I said. So I think it's too soon for them to be showing off something again. And then we have Guerrilla Games. So Guerrilla Games has two teams, one based in the Netherlands and one based in Cambridge. So the one based in the Netherlands is currently working on Horizon Zero Dawn, which looks absolutely awesome. If you haven't seen the game in action yet, go to YouTube and look up Horizon Zero Dawn E3 trailer or Horizon Zero Dawn Paris Games Week gameplay demo. And as I mentioned, they have another team in Cambridge who are working on Rigs, which is sort of like a mechanized esports type combat game. Looked quite cool when we saw the trailer at Paris Games Week, but we didn't actually see that much actual gameplay footage. It was mostly, I wouldn't call it a cinematic trailer, but it was sort of a cinematic trailer. So at Paris Games Week we did see gameplay footage of Horizon, as I mentioned, and that's when we got the Rigs trailer as well. So it's a bit unclear to me if we'll see them again at PSX. I think they'll definitely have at least one of the games playable on the show floor, but I don't think we will see the games at the actual conference. It's possible that if we do see something from Guerrilla, I think it's most likely going to be Rigs, since Rigs is a VR game. And again, PlayStation VR coming out early 2016 or first half of 2016. So next studio is Media Molecule. This is another UK-based studio. They're most known for the Little Big Planet series, even though they didn't make Little Big Planet 3. That was developed by Sumo Digital. They're currently working on Dreams, which is this bizarre creation game that we have seen at quite a few conferences this year. It was announced at Paris Games Week. It was announced at last year's PSX. And we saw it at E3 and we saw it at Paris Games Week. And despite the fact that we've seen it quite often now, I feel like there are still a lot of people who are confused about what the game is about. And because of that, I think we will see it again. But it's a bit 50-50 on this one. So moving on to the final studio based in Europe, it is Sony London, which is of course another UK-based studio based in London. They're most known for the SingStar games. They also did the Wonderbook and the iToy games. So they generally they don't really create games that the typical hardcore gamer cares about. They haven't done a typical AAA game since The Getaway. So that's a long time back. So I don't think we will see Sony London at PSX. And I hope we won't, because we always bitch and moan when Sony brings out the shitty casual games or TV stuff or movie stuff or things like that, because no one cares about that. Who can forget speaking of Wonderbook, who can forget the Wonderbook demo at E3, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, that lasted 20 minutes? Jesus Christ. So, unless Sony London is going in a completely new direction, I hope they won't be at the PSX. No offense to them. So moving on to the American studios. So we'll start with Naughty Dog, the crown jewel of the first-party studios. This is the studio responsible for Crash Bandicoot, Jak and Daxter, Uncharted, and The Last of Us. They're currently working on Uncharted 4: A Thief's End. This is Sony's last chance to show off Uncharted 4, as it's coming out on the 18th of March. I know they just showed us a new trailer at the Game Awards yesterday or today, depending on where you live in the world. But since it is Sony's biggest exclusive franchise, I think it will be at PSX as well. In my opinion, they don't really need to show more, but just because of the importance of the franchise, I think we will see something, whether it's more single player or more multiplayer stuff. Moving on to Sony Bend. This is the studio behind Siphon Filter, and more recently the Uncharted Golden Abyss and Resistance Burning Skies games on the Vita. So they haven't released anything since Uncharted Golden Abyss, which came out in December 2011 in Japan. So we haven't heard anything from them for 4 years now. We know that they're working on a AAA PS4 game, but we don't know anything else. We don't know what type of genre they're working on. We don't know. Yeah, we don't know anything other than the fact that it's a PS4 game. So a lot of hardcore PlayStation fans are getting a bit impatient, and I think it's time that we see this game. And seeing as they have been dormant since 2011, I think there is a fairly good chance that this game could actually come out in 2016. So maybe Sony will pull off a Bethesda and just announce it and then release it just a few months later. But we'll see. Moving on to Sony San Diego. This studio is mostly known for the MLB series, the baseball game. They're currently working on the next MLB game, of course, and they're also working on Killstrain. Killstrain is a 5 versus 2 versus 5 twin stick shooter. We saw Killstrain for the first time at last year's PSX. So I think there's a good chance we'll see it again here. The game has had a closed beta running for a while now, so perhaps it's time for an open beta at the PSX. Maybe we'll get a release date as well. They're also producing Drawn to Death, which is directed by David Jaffe. Was announced at PSX last year. It looked quite intriguing. And they're also producing Guns Up. So both of these games have had closed betas, and trophy lists have leaked online for both games. So it seems like both games are well into production, nearing completion. So I wouldn't be too surprised if both of these games are present. So when I say that Sony San Diego or Studio Japan are producing games, it means that they're not they're sort of assisting with development, and then they're helping with and then they're publishing the game, basically. So Sony Santa Monica is the next studio, and like Studio Japan, these guys develop games internally and then help second-party studios with development or production. They're most known for the internally developed God of War games, however. So only the main title, well, not the main title, the console God of War games, the handheld ones, were developed by Ready at Dawn, of course, for the PSP. They're currently working on what we assume is another God of War game. They were working on a brand new IP, actually, but reports were coming out last year that this game was cancelled and the studio had layoffs as well. So they basically had to start from scratch. And they're also co-developing or producing games such as Fat Princess Adventures, Wadham, and What Remains of Edith Finch. What Remains of Edith Finch. The latter one being one I imagine will be at PSX. I think it's way too soon for them to show their own internally developed game, since the new IP was cancelled. So I don't think we will see something from these internal studios at Santa Monica, but we will probably see What Remains of Edith Finch. Moving on then to the next studio, which is Sucker Punch. This is the studio who developed the Sly Cooper trilogy on the PS2, and more recently the Infamous series on the PS3 and PS4. So we don't know what they're working on now, and it's probably too soon for them to show off their game. Infamous Second Son came out about half a year after the launch of PS4, and then they did the First Light DLC. Even if the team sort of split after the release of Second Son, and then one half of the team, or one part of the team, did First Light, and then the other team started working on the new next game. I think it's way too soon for them to be showing off this game. So I don't think we will see Sucker Punch at PSX. even though it would be cool. Huge fan of the Infamous series. Fantastic games. So moving on then to the second party studios, because that was all the 11 first party studios. So let's begin with Insomniac. Insomniac is the studio behind Spyro and Ratchet and Clank. So when I say Spyro, I mean the original Spyro games before Spyro became Skylanders and became this billion-dollar franchise. They're currently working on a Ratchet and Clank remake, which we know is coming spring 2016. The same time the Ratchet and Clank movie is coming out. In fact, the game was even delayed to coincide with the release of the movie. So this game is in the same sort of position as Uncharted 4. This is the last chance for Sony to show off the game before it releases. So I definitely expect this one to be at the show. Sony's movie division is also responsible for the movie, so perhaps we'll see another trailer of the movie as well. And maybe we'll get a concrete release date for the game. Moving on to Housemarque is the Finnish developer behind the Super Stardust games and Dead Nation and Resogun. They're currently working on Alienation and the newly announced Matterfall. So Matterfall was, of course, announced at the Paris Games Week. I think we will see Housemarque at the show. We assume Alienation will be out in 2016, so this will be a good opportunity to show off the game again. And since we only got a cinematic trailer for Matterfall, perhaps we'll see some gameplay this time, or maybe it's too soon. But I think at the very least we'll see Alienation, but who knows? They could be saving things for E3. Moving on to Hello Games, who are working on No Man's Sky. This won the most anticipated game award yesterday or earlier today, depending on where you live, at the Game Awards. And this game seems to be present at every single show. So expect it to make an appearance here as well. So we know it's coming out in June next year. So perhaps we'll finally get a specific release date at PSX. If not, then I expect it to be present anyway, just because it's been present at every single show so far. It's also a game that makes a lot of sense for VR, and so far VR hasn't actually been confirmed for the game, I believe. Let me just double check that so I don't misinform you. Sorry. Yeah, it hasn't actually been confirmed yet. So Hello Games have said that it would be that they're sort of experimenting with VR technology, and Sony themselves have said that if you were to assume that No Man's Sky is a PlayStation VR launch game, that would be an interesting assumption. So I think we'll see something VR related for No Man's Sky at PSX. Moving on to Supermassive Games, most known for the very recent Until Dawn game. They announced Until Dawn Rush of Blood at Paris Games Week, which is a PlayStation VR exclusive. So again, with PS VR coming in the first half of 2016, you can expect this game to be present at PSX in some form, whether it's on the stage or if it's just on the show floor as a VR demo. That's actually all of the second-party studios I have on my list here, but there are several other second-party studios. Some studios like Q Games and Giant Sparrow were sort of covered in the first-party lineup because of their collaboration with a first-party studio. The rest I haven't included because I don't think we'll see them there. So a game like Wild, for example, which we saw at Paris Games Week, it got a very substantial and very impressive demo at Paris Games Week. So I don't think we will see Wild again. Who knows? It could make an appearance. Sony likes to make these conferences very long. Let me just see how long last year's was. Last year, the show was about 2 hours, 2 hours and 10 minutes long-ish. So, yeah, they like their long press conferences. So there's definitely time to show off Wild as well if they want to. So moving on to the third parties. So for the sake of keeping this short, we'll only be talking about the big publishers or developers. So we'll start with 2K Games. I think we will see Battleborn. The game is set to launch on the 3rd of May. And at Paris Games Week, it was announced that the beta will be coming first to PS4. So time's running out. This is another announcement that I imagine could be another one of those it's available right now sort of things. So yeah, I think we could see Battleborn. Also, you may remember that some years ago, Rockstar was supposed to develop a PlayStation exclusive called Agent, but something happened to that game. It never came out, and we never heard from it again. And rumors have it that Rockstar owes Sony an exclusive, so perhaps we will finally get something. Another dream announcement, or the dream announcement, I should say, would be another Red Dead from Rockstar. Of course, we haven't had a Red Dead game since Red Dead Redemption, and it's been quite a few years now since that came out, so perhaps it's time for another Red Dead. We know the franchise isn't dead. Right? It's bound to come back, so perhaps it would be amazing. But perhaps it's more of an E3 thing to announce, but who knows? Moving on to Activision, I think we will see something Destiny related. I hope it doesn't happen. No offense to Destiny. I have played Destiny and it was a lot of fun. It's just, we see Destiny all the time. We don't need to have Destiny at every single press conference from Sony just because of their new partnership, it seems. Don't think we will see anything else from Activision if they are present, except maybe Skylanders. They don't really have anything else, really. That's PlayStation related. So, either Destiny or Skylanders or nothing from Activision, I think. Moving on to Bandai Namco. One game Dark Souls 3. Dark Souls 3 is coming out on the 24th of March, which is my birthday actually, in Japan, and is coming out in April in the rest of the world. So I fully expect a trailer and an exact Western release date, because we still don't know when in April it's coming out. Perhaps we'll find out more about Tekken 7 as well. We found out at Paris Games Week that Tekken 7 will have VR functionality. I have no idea how you're going to implement VR in a fighting game unless you're going to create a first-person mode for Tekken, but that would just be weird. Unless you're going to create like this VR spectator mode, I suppose, where you have the two fighters fighting right in front of your very eyes or whatever. So yeah, Dark Souls 3 I think is a very safe bet. Moving on to Bethesda. Don't think it's very likely for Bethesda to be here. If they are going to be there, we'll probably be seeing Doom or Dishonored 2 or possibly the Elder Scrolls Online. But I think it's highly unlikely that Bethesda will be at the show. If they are there, then the most likely game to be there is probably Elder Scrolls Online. Moving on to Capcom. So the Capcom Cup final will be held at PSX, and the third beta phase of Street Fighter V will also begin later this month. The game is set to launch on the 16th of February. So I think there's a good chance this game will get some stage time. Of course, Street Fighter V coming exclusively to consoles on the PS4. It's also coming to the PC. And because Sony has helped funded this game, I think there's a good chance we'll see this game get a bit of push from Sony. So we'll probably see it at the event. Deep Silver. So I've added these guys just because of Mighty Number 9, which launches early February next year. But I doubt this will get stage time though. Maybe in like a sizzle reel or something. Like Sony tends to have like this sizzle reel of indie games, just to show them off like really, really quickly. And this could possibly be one of them that will be included in the sizzle reel, but I don't think they'll get like this separate demo or something on the stage. Moving on to EA. So I expect to see either Star Wars Battlefront, even though it's already out, or Star Wars Disney Infinity. It's all about that marketing push. Star Wars Battlefront already out, as I said, but the movie will be out soon, so wouldn't be surprised to see another push for that. And besides, Battlefront seems to be getting quite a heavy push from Sony as well. And the same goes for the Star Wars Disney Infinity figures. We'll probably see figures of all of the new characters, such as Kylo Ren and stuff like that. So I think it's a pretty safe bet to say that EA will be there with Star Wars in some capacity. And then I have added Konami as a joke, because they have nothing. Absolutely nothing. Kojima is gone. Moving on to NIS. So NIS is the publisher responsible for localizing a lot of Japanese games here in the West. I think there's a good chance we'll see Danganronpa 3. They just released a Japanese trailer with a Japanese 2016 release window. So perhaps we'll see an English trailer with a Western release window at PSX. And then moving on to Sega, I have Persona 5 here. So Sega, of course, owns Atlus, who is the developer of Persona. And we know Persona 5 is coming out summer 2016. So depending on when they're planning on launching this game, we could see it either at PSX or at E3. I think it'll be at the E3 regardless. But it could be shown off here at PSX as well. Perhaps we'll get a specific release date. And I know a lot of people would love it if Persona 5 was present at PSX. There are a lot of Persona fans out there, to say the least. One game I would personally love to see at PSX is Valkyria Chronicles Remastered. I love Valkyria Chronicles. If you haven't seen it yet, go check out my Valkyria Chronicles reactions video on my YouTube channel. So we know the remaster is coming to Japan in February, but we don't know if it's coming to the West. So this is the place, Sega. This is the place to announce it. Tell us it's coming to PlayStation 4 to the West. I want to throw money at you. So moving on then to Square Enix. So, we found out a few days ago that Final Fantasy 15 is now playable from start to finish. So the game is finally nearing completion after 9 years? 10 years in development? Don't expect to see Final Fantasy 15 at PSX though, because Square is planning to hold their own special event in March 2016, where they'll also announce the release date for Final Fantasy 15. So do not expect Final Fantasy 15 to be at the PSX. And what we can expect though is Final Fantasy 7. And I'm not talking about the remake. I'm talking about the PS4 port of the PC version that is available on Steam. The trophy list recently leaked and the port was announced at last year's PSX. Who can ever forget that moment? I remember watching it live, and when the Final Fantasy logo and stuff came up, the whole room started going crazy. It was like, well, not just the room. Everyone on the internet who was watching started going crazy. Everyone was like, "Ooh, are they actually going to do it? Are they actually doing it?" And then they gave us that ultimate troll announcement when it turned out to be that the PC port is coming to the PS4. Please be excited. I know Please Be Excited wasn't at that press conference, but yeah. We'll never forget Please Be Excited either. So yeah, expect Final Fantasy 7, the port, to be at PSX. Perhaps this is another "it's available right now" kind of announcement. Another thing I think we could see from Square Enix is an announcement of Final Fantasy XII Remastered. It was sort of accidentally announced earlier this year at a Distant World concert by the conductor Arnie Roth. Seeing as the Final Fantasy X remaster, which was such a success for Square Enix, I think it's highly likely that we'll get a remaster of Final Fantasy XII at some point. Whether that's now or later remains to be seen, though. I would love for it to be remastered. I remember when Final Fantasy XII originally came out, I had mixed feelings about it. I thought the world and the gameplay was superb. I feel like the cast and the story didn't quite live up to its potential. The storyline had such potential. The background was phenomenal, but there was just something about the story that just didn't click, in my opinion. Like it was fine. It wasn't bad in any form. It just wasn't as good as previous Final Fantasies, in my opinion. Then the music, it was the first Final Fantasy where Nobu Uematsu wasn't involved at all. And I think that showed as well. Not that there was anything wrong with the Final Fantasy XII soundtrack, but again, it wasn't as good as previous Final Fantasy soundtracks, in my opinion. And then the cast, some of the characters were pretty awesome, and then we had some less awesome characters. But despite having mixed feelings about Final Fantasy XII, I really enjoyed it, and when I look back at it now, it was a great step towards modernizing Final Fantasy, in my opinion. Like Final Fantasy XIII should have continued in the same direction as Final Fantasy XII, but since they didn't, we got something that wasn't so great. But anyway, 12, would love to see it remastered. And I would probably get the Platinum Trophy if it is remastered. So moving on to Ubisoft. We'll probably see Far Cry Primal. It was shown at the Game Awards show, but since it releases on the 23rd of February, this is the last opportunity to show off the game at a huge event. So I think it's safe to assume that this game will be present at both shows. The Game Awards trailer was very cinematic, so that leaves the chance of a gameplay demo at PSX Open. That's typically what happens at E3 as well. Like you'll see Ubisoft pull off a cinematic Assassin's Creed trailer during their press conference, and then later at Sony's press conference there's an actual gameplay demo. So yeah. Other games we could see from Ubisoft include The Division, since this is coming out on the 8th of March. So again, last chance to show off the game. They're also working on For Honor and South Park, The Fractured Butthole. I would love to see more of South Park. I loved the first game. It was so funny, and I'm a big South Park fan, so would love to see the South Park game at the show, but I doubt it will be there. And that's it for the third-party studios. Other things I think we could see at the show include PlayStation VR, of course. Again, this comes out in the first half of 2016, so good chance we'll see a lot of PlayStation VR stuff at the conference. Although it is quite difficult to showcase VR, so it could just be something that they'll demo on the show floor for the people who attend. Another thing we'll probably see is PS2 backwards compatibility / emulation. We've heard a lot of rumors and reports about it in the last few weeks, so I definitely expect an announcement to be made at PSX. We'll probably hear about how many PS4 have been sold as well. I think we've reached 30 million now, so well done to Sony. I hope we won't see anything TV or movie related, but you never know. I don't think we will, but yeah. They usually save that stuff for E3, so I don't think there will be anything TV or movie related. Maybe we'll see some PSN announcements. There have been some rumors about PSN name changing, which has been one of the most requested features for the PSN for years. So maybe we'll finally get it. I wouldn't hold my breath though. It's been how many years has it been since the launch of PSN? Probably around 9 years. Can't remember if PS3 launched with PSN or not, but either way, it's been several years, and they haven't figured it out. So yeah, I wouldn't hold my breath. It's better to be pleasantly surprised. Other things we could see related to PSN is the next firmware update, perhaps. New features and stuff that will be included in the next firmware update. And that's that. So 1 hour of predictions, or well, not predictions, but speculation. So the PlayStation Experience begins tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's 6 p.m. UK time or 7 p.m. Central European time. If you don't live in either of those areas, Google time zone converter so to find out when the show starts in your country. The show will be streamed probably by PlayStation, probably on YouTube and on Twitch. I'll be watching this show live on Twitch, so tune in if you want live reactions from me. I'll also be doing a PSX drinking game during the stream, and you're welcome to join in. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. My Twitch channel is AregGaming. That's AregGaming, one word. Please follow me on Twitter. I am at @areg_gaming. Tweet me your thoughts. What do you hope to see at PSX? What do you think we'll see, etc. And let me know what you thought about this episode. I'm also trying to reach 100 subs on YouTube at the moment, so please subscribe to my channel there. I publish videos more or less every day or every weekday. So please check out my YouTube channel, which is AregGaming, again in one word. If you want to pay for this episode, you can do so on Bandcamp, where you can also download a higher quality format of this show for free if you like. I also plan on doing a post-show episode with my thoughts and reactions from the show, so please tweet me your questions or topic suggestions as well for that. That's probably going to be that is going to be the last episode of this podcast. If you'd like me to continue to do this podcast, please do support me on Patreon. The goal for the podcast is only $5, and you get rewards for supporting me, such as behind the scenes footage and early access to the podcast. and other things, just head over to my Patreon page to check that out. Links to all of this can be found on my Twitter page or in the description below. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends. So the post-show episode, as I mentioned earlier, will probably be... I'll probably record it on Sunday, so it will be up either on Sunday or on Monday. So until then, take care, guys, and I hope I'll see you at my live stream on Saturday. Before we end, I'd also like to say that the Twitch live stream on my channel will probably start about half an hour before the actual conference, so 5:30 UK time and 6:30 Central European time. Please tune in, it's going to be a lot of fun, I think.